Question 1. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of regulatory scrutiny regarding the data privacy implications of a new AI-powered hiring tool being developed by NVIDIA. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and guidelines for the NVIDIA hiring assessment test jurisdiction? Option A. Proceed with the development and deployment of the AI hiring tool, assuming internal legal review is sufficient to address potential data privacy concerns. Option B. Halt all development of the AI hiring tool until a comprehensive, independent audit of its data privacy compliance can be completed by a certified third-party auditor. Option C. Implement the AI hiring tool with a disclaimer stating that users acknowledge and accept potential data privacy risks, shifting the burden of compliance to the end user. Option D. Engage with legal counsel specializing in data privacy regulations within the specified jurisdiction and consult with relevant regulatory bodies to ensure the AI hiring tool's design and data handling practices are fully compliant before deployment. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the development and deployment of the AI hiring tool, assuming internal legal review is sufficient to address potential data privacy concerns. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the company's desire for rapid innovation and market leadership with the imperative to adhere to stringent regulatory requirements designed to protect consumers and maintain market integrity. NVIDIA, as a leading technology company, operates in a highly regulated environment, and any misstep in compliance can lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of consumer trust. Careful judgment is required to ensure that product development and deployment processes are robust enough to meet these obligations without stifling innovation. The correct approach involves proactively engaging with relevant regulatory bodies and legal counsel to understand and interpret the specific requirements of the NVIDIA hiring assessment test jurisdiction. This ensures that all compliance measures are aligned with the letter and spirit of the law, minimizing the risk of violations. By seeking expert guidance, NVIDIA can develop and implement policies and procedures that are both effective and legally sound, demonstrating a commitment to responsible business practices. This approach prioritizes a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape before making decisions, thereby mitigating potential risks. An incorrect approach that relies solely on internal interpretations without external validation is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of due diligence and an overestimation of internal expertise, which can lead to misinterpretations of complex regulations. Such an approach risks noncompliance, as internal teams may overlook nuances or specific requirements mandated by the governing framework. Another incorrect approach, which prioritizes speed of deployment over thorough regulatory review, is also professionally unsound. This demonstrates a disregard for compliance obligations and a willingness to accept potentially significant legal and ethical risks for short-term gains. This can result in products or processes that, while innovative, are not legally permissible or ethically defensible. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the applicable regulatory environment. This involves identifying all relevant laws, regulations, and guidelines. Next, they should consult with legal and compliance experts to interpret these requirements in the context of NVIDIA-specific business operations. Before implementing any new strategy or product, a thorough risk assessment should be conducted, with a particular focus on regulatory compliance. Finally, ongoing monitoring and periodic reviews should be established to ensure continued adherence to evolving regulatory standards. Question 2. Governance review demonstrates potential vulnerabilities in NVIDIA data handling practices and intellectual property protection mechanisms. Which of the following approaches best addresses these findings in accordance with robust corporate governance and regulatory compliance? Option A. Immediately deploy broad, untested security software across all systems to proactively block potential threats without a detailed analysis of the specific vulnerabilities. Option B. Classify the findings as low priority and schedule a review for the next annual governance assessment cycle, assuming current practices are sufficient. Option C. Engage external cybersecurity consultants to implement a new security framework with minimal involvement from NVIDIA internal legal and audit departments. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive, documented investigation led by internal audit and legal counsel to identify root causes, followed by the development and implementation of enhanced data governance policies and security protocols. The correct answer is D. Initiate a comprehensive, documented investigation led by internal audit and legal counsel to identify root causes, followed by the development and implementation of enhanced data governance policies and security protocols. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the company's strategic objectives with its ethical and regulatory obligations, particularly concerning data privacy and intellectual property. NVIDIA, as a technology leader, handles vast amounts of sensitive data and proprietary information. A governance review highlighting potential weaknesses necessitates immediate and decisive action to mitigate risks and maintain stakeholder trust. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any remediation efforts are both effective and compliant with relevant regulations. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented investigation led by internal audit and legal counsel, followed by the implementation of robust data governance policies and enhanced security protocols. This approach is best professional practice because it directly addresses the identified weaknesses in a systematic and compliant manner. It ensures that any remediation is based on a clear understanding of the issues, adheres to NVIDIA internal policies, and complies with applicable data protection laws and regulations, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, depending on NVIDIA operational jurisdictions, which are assumed to be U.S.-centric for this assessment unless otherwise specified. This methodical process safeguards sensitive information, protects intellectual property, and demonstrates a commitment to responsible corporate governance. An incorrect approach of immediately implementing broad, untested security measures without a proper investigation fails to identify the root cause of the governance weaknesses. This could lead to inefficient resource allocation, disruption of legitimate business operations, and potentially introduce new vulnerabilities. It also risks overstepping regulatory boundaries or failing to address the specific compliance gaps. Another incorrect approach of relying solely on external consultants without involving internal legal and audit teams bypasses critical internal oversight and knowledge. While external expertise can be valuable, the primary responsibility for governance and compliance rests internally. This approach can lead to recommendations that are not fully aligned with NVIDIA operational realities or internal control environment, and it may not adequately address the specific legal and regulatory nuances applicable to NVIDIA business. A further incorrect approach of downplaying the findings and deferring significant action until a future audit cycle is a serious ethical and regulatory failure. It demonstrates a lack of commitment to good governance and risk management, potentially exposing NVIDIA to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of competitive advantage. Proactive risk mitigation is a cornerstone of responsible corporate behavior. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that prioritizes a structured, evidence-based approach. This involves 1. Acknowledging and thoroughly investigating the findings of the governance review. 2. Engaging relevant internal stakeholders, legal, compliance, IT business units to understand the implications. 3. Developing a remediation plan that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, smart, with clear ownership and accountability. 4. Ensuring the plan aligns with all applicable legal and regulatory requirements. 5. Implementing the plan with appropriate monitoring and validation. 6. Communicating progress and outcomes to relevant stakeholders. Question 3. Governance review demonstrates that NVIDIA rapid product development cycle for its new AI accelerator chip may be outpacing its internal compliance checks for data privacy regulations. Which approach best ensures NVIDIA adherence to regulatory frameworks while fostering innovation? Option A. Delay engagement with the compliance department until a potential data privacy issue is flagged by external auditors or customers. Option B. Prioritize the speed to market for the new AI accelerator chip, assuming that any regulatory issues can be addressed post-launch through product updates. Option C. Integrate compliance and legal teams into the early stages of the AI accelerator chip's design and development process to proactively identify and address potential regulatory conflicts. Option D. Interpret data privacy regulations in the most favorable way possible to expedite the launch, without extensive consultation with legal experts. The correct answer is C. Integrate compliance and legal teams into the early stages of the AI accelerator chips design and development process to proactively identify and address potential regulatory conflicts. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the company's strategic objectives with the imperative to adhere to regulatory requirements and ethical conduct. The pressure to innovate and maintain a competitive edge, as exemplified by NVIDIA's position in the market, can sometimes create tension with the meticulous processes demanded by compliance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the pursuit of business goals does not lead to shortcuts that could result in regulatory breaches or ethical compromises. The correct approach involves proactively identifying potential conflicts between new product development and existing regulatory frameworks, and then engaging relevant compliance and legal teams early in the process. This demonstrates a commitment to responsible innovation and robust governance. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of regulatory compliance by ensuring that NVIDIA operations and product launches are scrutinized against applicable laws and guidelines before they are finalized. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of noncompliance, which can lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and operational disruptions. It also reflects a strong ethical commitment to operating with integrity and transparency. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed to market over regulatory due diligence fails to uphold the company's responsibility to comply with the law. This can lead to the introduction of products or services that inadvertently violate regulations, exposing NVIDIA to legal action and sanctions. Another incorrect approach, which involves seeking to interpret regulations in the most favorable light without consulting legal experts, risks misinterpreting complex legal requirements. This can result in unintentional noncompliance and a false sense of security regarding the legality of operations. Finally, an approach that delays engagement with compliance teams until a potential issue is identified is reactive rather than preventative. This significantly increases the likelihood of encountering unforeseen regulatory hurdles, which can be costly and time-consuming to resolve, and may even necessitate product redesign or withdrawal. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape relevant to NVIDIA business. This involves integrating compliance considerations into the earliest stages of product development and business strategy. When faced with potential conflicts, the process should involve seeking expert advice from legal and compliance departments, conducting thorough risk assessments, and documenting all decisions and justifications. A culture of ethical conduct and regulatory awareness, fostered from leadership down, is crucial for navigating these complex situations effectively. Question 4. Strategic planning requires NVIDIA to consider the integration of advanced AI tools to streamline its hiring assessment process. Given the absolute priority of adhering only to the regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines specified for the NVIDIA hiring assessment test, which approach best ensures compliance when developing new AI-driven evaluation strategies? Option A. Adopt AI tools and methodologies that are widely recognized as industry best practices for recruitment, assuming they will be acceptable within the NVIDIA hiring assessment test framework. Option B. Immediately engage external legal counsel to advise on the permissibility of various AI technologies in hiring, without first conducting an internal review of the NVIDIA hiring assessment test's specific rules. Option C. Interpret the NVIDIA hiring assessment test's guidelines flexibly, allowing for the introduction of innovative AI solutions that offer potential efficiency gains, even if they push the boundaries of current stated regulations. Option D. Prioritize a comprehensive review of the NVIDIA hiring assessment test's specific guidelines and prohibitions regarding AI in candidate evaluation before proposing any new AI integration strategies. The correct answer is D. Prioritize a comprehensive review of the NVIDIA hiring assessment test's specific guidelines and prohibitions regarding AI in candidate evaluation before proposing any new AI integration strategies. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires NVIDIA to balance aggressive market expansion with adherence to the strict regulatory framework governing its operations, specifically focusing on the NVIDIA hiring assessment test's jurisdiction. The core challenge lies in interpreting and applying the assessment's guidelines to a novel situation, ensuring that strategic decisions do not inadvertently violate compliance requirements. Careful judgment is paramount to avoid legal repercussions and maintain the company's reputation. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the NVIDIA hiring assessment tests, specific guidelines regarding the use of AI in candidate evaluation. This approach is best professional practice because it prioritizes direct compliance with the established regulatory framework. By consulting the assessment's explicit rules, NVIDIA can ensure its strategic planning for AI integration in hiring aligns with the test's intent and limitations, thereby mitigating risks of non-compliance and upholding ethical hiring standards as defined by the assessment. An incorrect approach that relies on general industry best practices for AI in hiring, without specific reference to the NVIDIA hiring assessment test's jurisdiction, fails because it ignores the absolute priority of adhering to the specified regulatory framework. This could lead to the adoption of AI tools or methodologies that, while common elsewhere, are explicitly prohibited or restricted by the assessment's rules. Another incorrect approach that involves seeking external legal counsel without first thoroughly examining the NVIDIA hiring assessment test-specific guidelines is also professionally unsound. A legal counsel is valuable. The immediate priority is to understand the internal regulatory document itself. Over-reliance on external advice before internal due diligence on the assessment's rules can lead to misinterpretations or unnecessary complications, potentially delaying strategic decisions or leading to non-compliance if the external advice is not perfectly tailored to the assessment's unique requirements. Finally, an approach that assumes the assessment's guidelines are flexible and can be interpreted broadly to accommodate innovative AI solutions is fundamentally flawed. The absolute priority and strict jurisdiction compliance requirements of the exam mandate a literal and precise application of the specified framework, leaving no room for subjective interpretation or deviation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a hierarchical approach. First, a deep dive into the specific regulatory framework provided, in this case, the NVIDIA hiring assessment test guidelines, followed by an assessment of how proposed strategies align with those rules. If ambiguities remain after internal review, then seeking clarification or expert advice, internal compliance teams, or, if necessary, external counsel becomes appropriate, always ensuring that the advice is grounded in the specific jurisdiction and framework in question. Question 5. Process analysis reveals that NVIDIA is developing a novel AI-powered autonomous driving system. During the development phase, a potential conflict arises between the system's advanced predictive capabilities, which push the boundaries of current safety standards, and the existing regulatory framework for vehicle safety and data privacy. What is the most appropriate course of action for NVIDIA to ensure compliance and responsible innovation? Option A. Halt all development of the AI system until a comprehensive new regulatory framework is established that specifically addresses the advanced capabilities being developed. Option B. Proceed with the development and deployment of the AI system, assuming that its advanced capabilities will inherently meet or exceed future regulatory expectations, and address any compliance issues that may arise post-launch. Option C. Implement the AI system with a disclaimer stating that its advanced features are experimental and may not fully comply with all current regulations, relying on user acceptance of the risks. Option D. Proactively engage with relevant regulatory bodies, seek clarification on existing regulations, and work collaboratively to understand how the new AI system can be validated and certified to meet current and anticipated compliance requirements, while also documenting all development and testing processes meticulously. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the development and deployment of the AI system, assuming that its advanced capabilities will inherently meet or exceed future regulatory expectations, and address any compliance issues that may arise post-launch. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire to innovate and the stringent regulatory requirements governing the development and deployment of new technologies, particularly in a sensitive area like AI. NVIDIA, as a leading technology company, must navigate this landscape with utmost diligence. The challenge lies in balancing the speed of innovation with the imperative to ensure compliance, ethical considerations, and public trust. Careful judgment is required to avoid regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and potential harm to end users. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive regulatory compliance strategy. This means establishing robust internal processes for identifying, assessing, and mitigating regulatory risks associated with new AI product development. It requires engaging with relevant regulatory bodies early in the development lifecycle, seeking clarification on applicable laws and guidelines, and incorporating compliance requirements into the design and testing phases. This approach ensures that NVIDIA innovations are not only technologically advanced, but also legally sound and ethically responsible, thereby fostering long-term sustainability and market leadership. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed to market over thorough regulatory review. This could manifest as a move fast and break things mentality, where compliance is treated as an afterthought or a hurdle to be overcome only when issues arise. Such an approach risks significant regulatory penalties, including fines and injunctions, and can lead to severe reputational damage if products are found to be non-compliant or to have unintended negative consequences. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the legal and ethical frameworks designed to protect consumers and the broader public interest. Another incorrect approach is to adopt a reactive stance, only addressing regulatory concerns when prompted by external audits or enforcement actions. This passive strategy is inefficient and costly, as it often requires significant remediation efforts after the fact. It also signals a lack of commitment to compliance, which can erode trust with regulators and stakeholders. A truly professional decision-making process for situations like this involves a continuous cycle of risk assessment, compliance planning, implementation, monitoring, and review. Professionals should foster a culture of compliance, where every team member understands their role in upholding regulatory standards. This includes seeking expert legal and compliance advice, staying abreast of evolving regulations, and embedding ethical considerations into every stage of product development and deployment. Question 6. Investigation of NVIDIA product development lifecycle for its next-generation graphics processing units, GPU, reveals a critical decision point regarding the integration of new AI acceleration features. The engineering team is eager to deploy these features rapidly to gain a competitive edge. However, the compliance department has raised concerns about potential implications for data privacy regulations and hardware security standards that may not have been fully addressed in the initial design phase. Which approach best ensures NVIDIA adherence to regulatory frameworks while fostering innovation? Option A. Prioritize rapid deployment of the AI features, with a commitment to address any identified regulatory compliance gaps post-launch through software updates. Option B. Focus solely on meeting the core performance specifications of the new GPUs, assuming that existing regulatory frameworks will adequately cover the novel AI acceleration features. Option C. Defer all comprehensive regulatory compliance testing until after the initial product launch to avoid delaying the market introduction of the innovative AI features. Option D. Implement a phased validation strategy where regulatory compliance checks, including data privacy and hardware security assessments, are integrated into each stage of the GPU development and driver release cycle. Correct answer is A. Prioritize rapid deployment of the AI features, with a commitment to address any identified regulatory compliance gaps post-launch through software updates. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire for rapid innovation and the regulatory imperative to ensure product safety and compliance. NVIDIA, as a leading technology company, operates in a highly regulated environment where product development must adhere to strict standards to protect consumers and maintain market integrity. The challenge lies in balancing the speed of development with the thoroughness of validation, especially when dealing with complex hardware and software integrations. Careful judgment is required to avoid compromising safety or compliance for the sake of expediency. The correct approach involves a phased validation process that integrates regulatory compliance checks at each stage of development. This means that as NVIDIA develops new GPU architectures and associated software drivers, each iteration undergoes rigorous testing against relevant industry standards and regulatory requirements. This proactive integration ensures that potential compliance issues are identified and addressed early, minimizing the risk of costly redesigns or product recalls later in the development cycle. This approach aligns with best practices in product stewardship and regulatory affairs, emphasizing a compliance by design philosophy. Specifically, it adheres to the principles of responsible innovation, where technological advancement is pursued within a framework of ethical and legal accountability. An incorrect approach would be to defer comprehensive regulatory validation until after the core product development is complete. This strategy creates significant risks. It could lead to the discovery of non-compliance issues late in the process, necessitating substantial rework and delaying market entry, which is detrimental to NVIDIA's competitive position. Furthermore, releasing a product that has not been adequately validated against regulatory standards exposes the company to potential legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of consumer trust. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on internal testing without seeking external validation or certification where required by specific regulations. This can lead to blind spots and an incomplete understanding of how the product will perform under real-world conditions or in different regulatory environments. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes a thorough understanding of applicable regulations from the outset of any project. This involves proactive engagement with legal and compliance teams, conducting thorough regulatory landscape analyses, and embedding compliance checkpoints into the project management lifecycle. When faced with potential trade-offs between speed and compliance, the framework should guide decision-makers to err on the side of caution, ensuring that all regulatory obligations are met before product launch. This systematic approach fosters a culture of compliance and responsible innovation within NVIDIA. Question 7. The control framework reveals that NVIDIA is exploring a new AI-powered feature for its GeForce Experience software that could analyze user gameplay patterns to offer personalized in-game recommendations. What is the most appropriate approach to ensure this feature adheres to best practices in data privacy and regulatory compliance? Option A. Prioritize rapid feature development and market release, with a plan to retroactively adjust data handling practices if any privacy issues are flagged by regulators. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment, DPIA, involving legal and privacy experts to identify and mitigate risks before development and deployment, ensuring compliance with relevant data protection laws. Option C. Rely on existing general data security protocols to protect user gameplay data, assuming that robust security inherently covers privacy requirements. Option D. Implement the feature immediately and address any potential data privacy concerns that arise post-launch based on user feedback and regulatory inquiries. Correct answer is D. Implement the feature immediately and address any potential data privacy concerns that arise post-launch based on user feedback and regulatory inquiries. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's strategic objectives with the ethical and regulatory obligations concerning data privacy and security. NVIDIA, as a technology leader, handles vast amounts of sensitive data, making robust control frameworks essential. The challenge lies in ensuring that innovation and competitive advantage are pursued without compromising user trust or violating applicable regulations. Careful judgment is required to interpret and apply these frameworks in a dynamic technological environment. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive risk assessment that integrates data privacy considerations from the outset of any new product development or feature enhancement. This approach prioritizes compliance with relevant data protection laws, such as the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, if operating within California, or similar regulations if the assessment is for a different jurisdiction. It necessitates engaging legal and compliance teams early to ensure that data collection, processing, and storage practices are lawful, transparent, and secure. This aligns with best practices in data governance and ethical technology development, fostering user confidence and mitigating legal and reputational risks. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with feature development without a thorough data privacy impact assessment. This failure to proactively identify and address potential privacy risks could lead to non-compliance with data protection laws, resulting in significant fines, legal action, and damage to NVIDIA reputation. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on general security measures without specific consideration for data privacy principles. While security is crucial, it does not inherently guarantee privacy. For instance, data might be technically secure but still used in ways that violate user consent or privacy rights. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize speed to market over thorough due diligence regarding data handling. This can lead to rushed decisions that overlook critical privacy implications, creating long-term liabilities. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that emphasizes a privacy by design and security by design philosophy. This involves embedding privacy and security considerations into every stage of the product lifecycle, from conception to deployment and beyond. For making decisions, professionals should ask, does this align with our ethical commitments? What are the potential privacy implications for our users? Are we compliant with all relevant data protection regulations? What are the potential legal and reputational risks? Engaging cross-functional teams, including legal, compliance, engineering, and product management, is crucial for a holistic assessment and informed decision-making. Question 8. The evaluation methodology shows that NVIDIA is seeking to understand the competitive landscape for its next-generation AI accelerators. Which of the following approaches to gathering competitive intelligence best aligns with ethical business practices and regulatory compliance for NVIDIA? Option A. Utilizing sophisticated network intrusion tools to probe competitor servers for internal documents detailing unreleased product specifications and marketing plans. Option B. Analyzing publicly available patent filings, financial reports, industry analyst reports, and attending public product launch events to infer competitor strategies and technological advancements. Option C. Encouraging current NVIDIA employees to actively solicit confidential information from their counterparts at competing companies during informal networking events. Option D. Engaging third-party consultants to conduct discreet inquiries with former employees of key competitors to gather insights into their product development pipelines and strategic priorities. Correct answer is D. Engaging third-party consultants to conduct discreet inquiries with former employees of key competitors to gather insights into their product development pipelines and strategic priorities. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's need for innovation and market competitiveness with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect intellectual property and ensure fair competition. NVIDIA, as a leader in its field, must navigate complex legal and ethical landscapes. The core of the challenge lies in distinguishing between legitimate competitive intelligence gathering and actions that could be construed as industrial espionage or a violation of fair business practices. Careful judgment is required to ensure that NVIDIA pursuit of technological advancement does not lead to unethical or illegal activities. The correct approach involves a structured, ethical, and legally compliant method for gathering competitive intelligence. This approach prioritizes information obtained through publicly available sources, industry analysis, and legitimate business interactions. It emphasizes thorough documentation and adherence to internal company policies and relevant regulations. This ensures that NVIDIA remains informed about market trends and competitor activities without engaging in any form of illicit information acquisition. The regulatory and ethical justification stems from principles of fair competition, respect for intellectual property rights, and adherence to laws governing business conduct. By focusing on open-source intelligence and ethical data collection, NVIDIA upholds its reputation and avoids legal repercussions. An incorrect approach that involves attempting to gain access to proprietary information through unauthorized means, such as exploiting vulnerabilities in a competitor's systems or bribing employees, represents a severe regulatory and ethical failure. This constitutes industrial espionage, which is illegal and carries significant penalties. Another incorrect approach, such as misrepresenting oneself to gain access to confidential product roadmaps or internal strategy documents, is a form of deception that violates ethical business practices and can lead to legal challenges related to fraud or misrepresentation. A third incorrect approach, which might involve broadly disseminating unsubstantiated rumors or disparaging remarks about competitors based on speculative or unverified information, undermines fair competition and can lead to defamation claims. All these incorrect approaches expose NVIDIA to legal liabilities, reputational damage, and a loss of trust among stakeholders. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the objectives of competitive intelligence gathering. This framework should then involve identifying all potential methods of information acquisition, followed by a rigorous assessment of the legality and ethicality of each method. Prioritizing methods that rely on publicly available information and ethical business practices is paramount. Any method that involves deception, unauthorized access, or potential violation of intellectual property rights should be immediately discarded. Furthermore, professionals should consult with legal counsel and ethics officers to ensure full compliance with all applicable laws and company policies before proceeding with any intelligence-gathering activities. Question 9. When evaluating the development lifecycle of a new AI accelerator at NVIDIA, which approach best ensures both rapid innovation and adherence to regulatory frameworks and internal compliance standards? Option A. Implementing a phased approach where regulatory compliance checks are integrated at key development milestones, with dedicated teams responsible for ongoing monitoring and validation against evolving standards. Option B. Focusing solely on performance metrics and technical specifications, assuming that regulatory compliance will be a secondary concern addressed if and when issues arise. Option C. Relying primarily on external certification bodies to validate compliance after the product has reached a near-final stage of development. Option D. Prioritizing speed to market by deferring comprehensive regulatory reviews until after the product launch, addressing any issues reactively. The correct answer is A. Implementing a phased approach where regulatory compliance checks are integrated at key development milestones, with dedicated teams responsible for ongoing monitoring and validation against evolving standards. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire for rapid innovation and the regulatory imperative to ensure product safety and compliance. NVIDIA, as a leading technology company, operates in a highly regulated environment where product development must adhere to stringent standards. The challenge lies in balancing the speed of market entry with the thoroughness of due diligence required to avoid potential legal repercussions, reputational damage, and harm to end users. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing interests effectively. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive risk assessment process that integrates regulatory compliance from the earliest stages of product development. This means establishing clear internal guidelines for testing, validation, and documentation that align with relevant NVIDIA policies and applicable industry standards. It also necessitates fostering a culture where engineers and product managers are empowered to raise concerns about potential compliance issues without fear of reprisal. This approach is ethically sound and legally defensible because it prioritizes the safety and integrity of NVIDIA products, thereby protecting consumers and the company's long-term viability. It aligns with the principle of responsible innovation, ensuring that technological advancements do not outpace the necessary safeguards. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed to market above all else, cutting corners on testing or documentation to meet aggressive deadlines. This poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. It could lead to the release of products that do not meet safety standards, potentially causing harm and resulting in substantial fines, product recalls, and legal liabilities for NVIDIA. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on external certifications without robust internal validation processes. While external certifications are important, they are not a substitute for a company's own due diligence and understanding of its product's compliance landscape. This failure to establish comprehensive internal controls can leave NVIDIA vulnerable to unforeseen issues and regulatory scrutiny. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore or downplay potential compliance risks identified by internal teams, assuming that regulatory bodies will not discover them or that the risks are negligible. This demonstrates a disregard for regulatory obligations and ethical responsibilities, creating a high likelihood of future problems. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the relevant regulatory landscape and NVIDIA internal compliance policies. This framework should involve a structured risk assessment process that identifies potential compliance gaps early in the development cycle. When potential issues arise, professionals should escalate them through established channels, providing clear and objective data to support their concerns. The decision-making process should always weigh the potential benefits of a faster market entry against the risks of non-compliance, prioritizing long-term sustainability and ethical conduct over short-term gains. Question 10. Governance review demonstrates that NVIDIA data handling practices in a specific research division may have inadvertently exposed sensitive customer data and proprietary algorithms to unauthorized access, potentially violating data privacy regulations and intellectual property rights. Which of the following represents the most responsible and legally compliant course of action for NVIDIA to take? Option A. Continue current data processing operations while initiating a discrete internal review to assess the extent of the exposure, with a plan to address any confirmed issues only after the review is complete and business impact is fully understood. Option B. Immediately halt all data processing activities within the affected division, launch a comprehensive internal investigation with external legal counsel, and proactively engage with relevant data protection authorities and affected parties as legally required. Option C. Prioritize the completion of ongoing critical research projects that utilize the data in question, while simultaneously forming a committee to discuss potential future policy changes regarding data security. Option D. Instruct the research division to immediately delete all potentially compromised data and implement new security protocols without formally reporting the incident to external bodies, assuming the exposure was minor and contained. The correct answer is B. Immediately halt all data processing activities within the affected division, launch a comprehensive internal investigation with external legal counsel, and proactively engage with relevant data protection authorities and affected parties as legally required. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the company's strategic objectives with the stringent ethical and regulatory obligations surrounding data privacy and intellectual property. NVIDIA, as a leader in AI and graphics processing, handles vast amounts of sensitive data and proprietary technology. A governance review revealing potential breaches necessitates immediate, decisive action that upholds legal compliance and maintains stakeholder trust, while also considering the operational impact of any remediation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive, multifaceted response that prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical conduct. This includes immediately ceasing any activities that violate data privacy regulations or intellectual property rights, initiating a thorough internal investigation to understand the scope and root cause of the breach, and engaging with relevant legal counsel and data protection authorities as required by law. This approach demonstrates a commitment to rectifying the situation responsibly, minimizing further harm, and adhering to the principles of good corporate governance and legal frameworks applicable to NVIDIA operations. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that focuses solely on damage control without addressing the root cause or regulatory obligations is professionally unacceptable. This might involve attempting to quietly rectify the issue internally without informing affected parties or regulatory bodies, which could lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and a loss of trust. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize business continuity or competitive advantage over immediate compliance. For instance, continuing to utilize potentially compromised data or intellectual property while an investigation is pending, or delaying reporting to regulatory authorities to avoid disruption, constitutes a serious ethical and legal failure. This demonstrates a disregard for the law and the rights of individuals or entities whose data or intellectual property may have been misused. A third incorrect approach is to dismiss the findings of the governance review without proper due diligence. This could involve attributing the findings to minor oversights or technical glitches without undertaking a formal investigation, thereby failing to identify and address systemic issues that could lead to future, more severe breaches. This reflects a lack of commitment to robust governance and risk management. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should adopt a framework that begins with immediate risk assessment and containment, followed by a thorough, objective investigation. This investigation should be guided by legal and compliance experts. Transparency with relevant stakeholders and regulatory bodies, as mandated by law, is paramount. The decision-making process should be rooted in a commitment to ethical conduct, legal compliance, and the long-term integrity of the organization. Prioritizing proactive compliance and ethical stewardship over short-term expediency is crucial for sustainable success and maintaining public trust. Question 11. Analysis of a scenario where an NVIDIA employee, who is not directly involved in strategic partnerships or M&A activities, learns through a casual conversation with a contact at a supplier that the supplier is in advanced discussions to be acquired by a competitor of NVIDIA. The employee, believing this information is not yet public and not directly material to NVIDIA immediate operations, considers purchasing shares in the supplier company. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory requirements and ethical best practices for an NVIDIA employee? Option A. Immediately consult NVIDIA compliance department for pre-clearance before making any trade in the supplier's stock, regardless of perceived materiality or direct relevance to NVIDIA operations. Option B. Discuss the potential acquisition with colleagues within NVIDIA to gauge their understanding of its potential impact before deciding whether to trade. Option C. Proceed with purchasing shares in the supplier company, as the information is not directly material to NVIDIA and the employee is not in a position to influence the acquisition. Option D. Wait for the acquisition to be publicly announced and then purchase shares in the supplier company, assuming the information will be fully disseminated by then. The correct answer is A. Immediately consult NVIDIA compliance department for pre-clearance before making any trade in the supplier's stock, regardless of perceived materiality or direct relevance to NVIDIA operations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an employee at NVIDIA due to the inherent conflict between a personal financial interest and their fiduciary duty to the company. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that personal investment decisions do not create even the appearance of impropriety or insider trading, which could have severe legal and reputational consequences for both the individual and NVIDIA. Careful judgment is required to navigate the boundaries of permissible personal trading while upholding ethical standards and regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to NVIDIA internal policies on personal trading and pre-clearance, as well as relevant securities regulations. This means proactively seeking approval before executing any trade in a company whose stock is publicly traded, especially if there's any potential connection, however indirect, to NVIDIA business or strategic direction. This approach is correct because it prioritizes transparency, compliance, and the avoidance of conflicts of interest. By obtaining pre-clearance, the employee demonstrates good faith and ensures that their trading activity is reviewed against established guidelines, thereby mitigating the risk of violating insider trading laws or company policy. This aligns with the principles of corporate governance and ethical conduct expected of employees in publicly traded companies. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the trade without seeking pre-clearance, assuming that the indirect nature of the potential information flow is insignificant. This is a regulatory and ethical failure because it disregards the established internal controls designed to prevent insider trading. Even if the information is not directly material, the appearance of a conflict or the potential for future misuse of information can be sufficient to trigger regulatory scrutiny. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on personal judgment about the materiality of the information. Securities laws are complex, and materiality is a legal determination, not a subjective one. Failing to consult the designated compliance department or follow the pre-clearance procedure constitutes a breach of duty and a potential violation of securities regulations. A third incorrect approach would be to attempt to obscure the trade or its connection to NVIDIA business. This is a clear ethical and legal violation, as it suggests an intent to circumvent compliance procedures and potentially engage in illicit trading. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a proactive and cautious mindset. Employees must familiarize themselves with their company's code of conduct and trading policies. When in doubt about the permissibility of a trade, the default action should always be to err on the side of caution and seek guidance from the compliance department or legal counsel. This involves understanding the concept of material non-public information and recognizing that even perceived connections can create risks. A robust decision-making framework includes 1. Identifying potential conflicts of interest. 2. Understanding relevant company policies and external regulations. 3. Seeking pre-clearance or expert advice when necessary. And 4. Documenting all decisions and actions taken. Question 12. Market research demonstrates that a new competitor is gaining traction in a niche market segment that NVIDIA is considering entering. To understand the competitor's strategy, NVIDIA product development team proposes to analyze publicly available customer reviews, forum discussions, and social media posts related to the competitor's offerings. Which of the following approaches best aligns with NVIDIA commitment to regulatory compliance and ethical data handling? Option A. Utilize advanced scraping tools to gather as much data as possible from various online sources, assuming that anything publicly accessible is fair game for competitive analysis. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive review with NVIDIA legal and compliance departments to confirm the legality and ethical implications of data collection and analysis methods, obtaining explicit approval before proceeding. Option C. Proceed with the analysis of publicly available data, ensuring that no personally identifiable information is directly stored or linked to individuals, and document the findings for internal use. Option D. Focus solely on the technical aspects of data aggregation and analysis, assuming that the product development team has the expertise to navigate any potential data privacy concerns. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the analysis of publicly available data, ensuring that no personally identifiable information is directly stored or linked to individuals, and document the findings for internal use. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's strategic goals with the ethical and regulatory obligations surrounding data privacy and intellectual property. NVIDIA, as a technology leader, handles vast amounts of sensitive data and proprietary information. A breach or misuse of this data could lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of competitive advantage. Therefore, careful judgment is required to ensure all actions align with established frameworks. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented review process that prioritizes compliance with NVIDIA internal policies and relevant data protection regulations. This approach is best professional practice because it demonstrates a commitment to responsible data handling and intellectual property protection. Specifically, it aligns with principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and security, which are fundamental to regulations like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, or the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, depending on the jurisdiction of operation and data subjects. By seeking explicit legal and compliance approval, NVIDIA ensures that its market research activities are conducted within the bounds of the law and ethical standards, mitigating risks and fostering trust. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the market research without explicit legal and compliance sign-off fails to uphold regulatory requirements. This could lead to inadvertent violations of data privacy laws, such as collecting or processing personal data without a lawful basis, or failing to implement adequate security measures. Another incorrect approach, which is to rely solely on the technical feasibility of data collection without considering its legality or ethical implications, ignores the critical oversight role of legal and compliance departments. This bypasses essential risk assessment and can result in significant legal repercussions and reputational harm. A third incorrect approach, which is to assume that publicly available data is automatically free for any use, is a dangerous oversimplification. While some data is public, its use may still be subject to terms of service, copyright, or privacy considerations, especially when aggregated or analyzed in specific ways that could infer sensitive information. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with identifying potential risks and regulatory touchpoints. This involves proactively consulting with legal and compliance teams at the outset of any project involving data or intellectual property. A structured review process, including risk assessments and documentation of approvals, should be a standard operating procedure. This ensures that all stakeholders are aware of and agree upon the compliant and ethical path forward, fostering a culture of responsibility within the organization. Question 13. System analysis indicates that NVIDIA is on the verge of releasing a groundbreaking AI model that promises significant advancements in computational graphics. However, during internal testing, the AI model has shown subtle but persistent biases in its output when processing data from underrepresented demographic groups. The engineering team believes these biases are minor and can be addressed in future iterations, and they are eager to launch the product to maintain a competitive edge. What is the most ethically responsible and professionally sound approach for NVIDIA to take in this situation? Option A. Delay the public release of the AI model until an independent external ethics review board has thoroughly assessed the identified biases and recommended mitigation strategies, and these strategies have been implemented. Option B. Proceed with the product launch as planned, acknowledging the biases internally but prioritizing market entry, with a commitment to addressing the issues in subsequent software updates. Option C. Release the AI model to a limited beta testing group comprised of diverse users to gather feedback on the biases before a full public release. Option D. Rely solely on the internal engineering team's assessment that the biases are minor and can be easily corrected post-launch, and proceed with the immediate public release. Correct answer is A. Delay the public release of the AI model until an independent external ethics review board has thoroughly assessed the identified biases and recommended mitigation strategies, and these strategies have been implemented. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire for rapid innovation and the ethical imperative to ensure the responsible development and deployment of advanced AI technologies. The pressure to be first to market can create a temptation to overlook potential risks or to downplay ethical considerations. Careful judgment is required to balance competitive pressures with the long-term implications of AI on society and individuals. The correct approach involves prioritizing a thorough and independent ethical review of the AI system's potential biases and societal impacts before its public release. This aligns with the principles of responsible AI development, which emphasize fairness, transparency, and accountability. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of emerging AI regulations and ethical guidelines that advocate for proactive risk assessment and mitigation. By engaging an external ethics board, NVIDIA demonstrates a commitment to objectivity and a willingness to address potential harms, thereby building trust with stakeholders and fostering a more sustainable AI ecosystem. This proactive stance helps to prevent potential reputational damage and legal liabilities that could arise from the release of a flawed or harmful AI system. An incorrect approach that involves solely relying on internal testing and assurances from the development team fails to acknowledge the potential for blind spots and inherent biases within the team itself. This approach risks overlooking critical ethical issues that an independent perspective might identify, leading to potential regulatory noncompliance and significant reputational damage if the AI system exhibits discriminatory behavior or causes unintended harm. Another incorrect approach, which is to proceed with the launch while acknowledging the concerns but deferring a full ethical review until after deployment, is highly irresponsible. This move fast and break things mentality is antithetical to the principles of responsible innovation in AI. It exposes NVIDIA to substantial legal and ethical risks, as it prioritizes short-term gains over the safety and well-being of users and society. Such a decision could lead to severe regulatory penalties, loss of public trust, and long-term damage to the company's brand and future prospects. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve establishing clear ethical guidelines and review processes early in the development lifecycle. This includes creating mechanisms for independent oversight, fostering a culture where ethical concerns can be raised without fear of reprisal, and integrating ethical considerations into the core design and testing phases of AI development. When faced with a conflict between speed to market and ethical due diligence, professionals should advocate for the latter, understanding that long-term success is built on a foundation of trust and responsible innovation. Question 14. Research into a new AI-powered feature for NVIDIA graphics processing units, GPU, that analyzes user behavior to optimize performance has revealed potential concerns regarding the collection and use of sensitive personal data. The engineering team is eager to release this feature to gain a competitive edge, but the product manager is hesitant due to the ethical implications and potential regulatory noncompliance. What is the most responsible course of action for NVIDIA in this situation? Option A. Proceed with the release of the AI feature immediately, assuming that existing general data privacy policies are sufficient and that the competitive advantage outweighs potential minor concerns. Option B. Halt the development of the AI feature until a comprehensive ethical review is conducted, including consultation with legal and compliance teams, to ensure alignment with NVIDIA AI ethics principles and all applicable data protection regulations. Option C. Release the AI feature with a disclaimer stating that user data is collected, without conducting a detailed review of potential biases or specific data handling protocols for this new feature. Option D. Focus solely on the technical performance benefits of the AI feature and defer any ethical or data privacy discussions until after the product has been launched and user feedback is received. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the release of the AI feature immediately, assuming that existing general data privacy policies are sufficient and that the competitive advantage outweighs potential minor concerns. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire for rapid innovation and the ethical imperative to ensure that new technologies, particularly those involving AI and data, are developed and deployed responsibly. The pressure to be first to market can tempt individuals to overlook potential ethical pitfalls or regulatory compliance issues. Careful judgment is required to balance competitive pressures with the long-term implications of AI development on individuals and society. The correct approach involves proactively seeking and adhering to established ethical AI principles and relevant data privacy regulations. This means that before NVIDIA proceeds with the new AI feature, the team must conduct a thorough ethical review, consult with legal and compliance departments, and ensure the feature aligns with NVIDIA internal AI ethics guidelines and any applicable data protection laws. This approach prioritizes responsible innovation, builds trust with users and stakeholders, and mitigates legal and reputational risks. It demonstrates a commitment to ethical AI development, which is increasingly becoming a standard expectation for leading technology companies. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed to market over ethical considerations. This might involve launching the AI feature without a comprehensive review of its potential biases, data privacy implications, or societal impact. Such an approach risks violating data protection regulations, leading to significant fines and legal repercussions. It also exposes NVIDIA to severe reputational damage if the AI feature is found to be discriminatory, intrusive, or otherwise harmful. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that existing general data privacy policies are sufficient without specific consideration for the unique data handling requirements of the new AI feature. This can lead to unintended data breaches or misuse, as AI systems often process and generate data in novel ways that may not be adequately covered by legacy policies. Finally, ignoring potential biases within the AI model, even if unintentional, is ethically unsound and can lead to unfair outcomes for certain user groups, undermining the principle of fairness in AI. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that integrates ethical considerations and regulatory compliance from the outset of any project. This involves 1. Identifying potential ethical and regulatory risks early in the development lifecycle. 2. Consulting with relevant internal stakeholders, including legal, compliance, and ethics officers. 3. Conducting thorough impact assessments, including bias audits and privacy reviews. 4. Developing clear guidelines and safeguards to address identified risks. 5. Establishing mechanisms for ongoing monitoring and evaluation of the AI feature's performance and impact. This proactive and integrated approach ensures that innovation is pursued responsibly and sustainably. Question 15. The monitoring system demonstrates that a software engineer at NVIDIA, who is working remotely, has been spending a significant portion of their work hours browsing non-work-related websites and engaging in online gaming, rather than actively coding or participating in team discussions. This behavior has been consistent for the past 2 weeks. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the engineer's direct manager? Option A. Immediately escalate the issue to human resources for disciplinary review and potential termination. Option B. Schedule a private meeting with the engineer to discuss the observed activity, express concerns about productivity and adherence to company policy, and provide an opportunity for the engineer to explain their actions. Option C. Share the monitoring data with the rest of the engineering team to highlight the importance of focus and productivity. Option D. Ignore the monitoring data as it may be an inaccurate reflection of the engineer's overall contribution and avoid potential conflict. The correct answer is B. Schedule a private meeting with the engineer to discuss the observed activity, express concerns about productivity and adherence to company policy, and provide an opportunity for the engineer to explain their actions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's legitimate interest in monitoring employee productivity and adherence to policies with the employee's right to privacy and the ethical implications of surveillance. The specific jurisdiction for this NVIDIA hiring assessment test is assumed to be the United States, focusing on federal and relevant state laws concerning employee monitoring and data privacy, as well as general ethical principles applicable in the tech industry. Careful judgment is required to avoid overreach and potential legal or reputational damage. The correct approach involves a transparent and policy-driven response that respects employee rights while addressing the observed behavior. This means initiating a private conversation with the employee, clearly outlining the observed concerns based on the monitoring data, and providing an opportunity for the employee to explain their actions. This approach aligns with principles of fairness, due process, and respect for individual dignity. Ethically, it prioritizes constructive resolution over punitive action without investigation. Legally, it mitigates risks associated with wrongful termination or privacy violations by ensuring a documented, fair process. An incorrect approach of immediately reporting the employee to HR for disciplinary action without direct communication fails to provide the employee with a chance to explain or rectify the situation. This can be perceived as unfair and may violate company policies that mandate progressive discipline or direct feedback. Ethically, it bypasses the principle of giving an individual a fair hearing. Legally, it could lead to claims of unfair treatment or constructive dismissal if not handled with proper procedural safeguards. Another incorrect approach of ignoring the monitoring data and taking no action, despite observing potential policy violations, is professionally negligent. While it avoids direct confrontation, it allows potential issues to persist, which could impact team productivity, project timelines, or even lead to more serious breaches if the behavior escalates. Ethically, it fails to uphold the responsibility to manage performance and ensure a productive work environment. Legally, it could be seen as a failure to enforce company policies consistently. A further incorrect approach of broadly sharing the monitoring data with other team members to shame or pressure the employee is highly unethical and potentially illegal. This constitutes a breach of privacy and could create a hostile work environment, leading to significant legal repercussions and damage to NVIDIA reputation. Ethically, it violates principles of confidentiality and respect. Legally, it could expose NVIDIA to claims of defamation, invasion of privacy, and creating a hostile work environment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the relevant company policies and legal frameworks governing employee monitoring and conduct. 2. Objectively assessing the monitoring data to identify specific concerns, not making assumptions. 3. Prioritizing direct, private communication with the employee to discuss observations and gather their perspective. 4. Documenting all interactions and decisions. 5. Escalating to HR or legal counsel if the situation warrants further action or if there are legal ambiguities. 6. Focusing on constructive resolution and employee development where possible, while upholding company standards. Question 16. Comparative studies suggest that the rapid advancement of AI technologies necessitates a proactive approach to ethical considerations. NVIDIA is developing a new AI model that, while offering significant performance improvements, could potentially be misused for generating sophisticated disinformation campaigns. The Internal Ethics Review Committee has raised concerns, but the product development team is pushing for an expedited release to maintain market competitiveness. Which of the following approaches best aligns with responsible AI development and emerging regulatory expectations? Option A. Release the AI model with a disclaimer about potential misuse, leaving the responsibility for ethical use entirely to the end users. Option B. Proceed with the expedited release, focusing on post-deployment monitoring for any misuse and addressing issues as they arise. Option C. Halt the release and conduct a comprehensive ethical impact assessment involving external AI ethics experts to identify and mitigate potential risks before any deployment. Option D. Prioritize the release to gain market advantage and address any ethical concerns only if regulatory bodies explicitly mandate it. Correct answer is B. proceed with the expedited release, focusing on post-deployment monitoring for any misuse and addressing issues as they arise. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire for rapid innovation and the ethical imperative to ensure the responsible development and deployment of advanced AI technologies. NVIDIA, as a leader in AI hardware and software, faces scrutiny regarding the potential misuse of its products and the societal impact of AI. The challenge lies in balancing competitive pressures with the need for robust ethical oversight and compliance with evolving regulatory landscapes. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing interests without compromising integrity or fostering an environment where ethical considerations are secondary to business objectives. The correct approach involves proactively engaging with ethical AI principles and regulatory frameworks, even in the absence of explicit mandates for every specific scenario. This demonstrates a commitment to responsible innovation and builds trust with stakeholders. By prioritizing ethical review and seeking guidance from internal ethics committees and potentially external experts, NVIDIA can identify and mitigate potential risks associated with its AI technologies before they are widely deployed. This aligns with the spirit of emerging AI regulations that emphasize foresight, risk assessment, and accountability, even if specific laws are still in development. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining a strong ethical reputation and ensuring long-term sustainability in the AI industry. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate product release over thorough ethical review fails to acknowledge the potential for unintended consequences and societal harm. This approach risks violating nascent regulatory principles that are increasingly focusing on the responsible development of AI. It also exposes NVIDIA to reputational damage and potential legal repercussions if its technologies are misused or cause harm. Another incorrect approach, which relies solely on existing, potentially outdated, regulations without considering the unique ethical implications of advanced AI, is also professionally unacceptable. AI technologies often present novel ethical dilemmas that may not be fully addressed by current legal frameworks. A failure to adapt ethical considerations to the specific context of AI development can lead to significant oversight and potential breaches of ethical conduct. Finally, an approach that delegates ethical decision-making entirely to individual engineers without a structured oversight mechanism is flawed. While individual responsibility is important, a comprehensive ethical framework requires a collective and systematic approach, involving diverse perspectives and established review processes to ensure consistency and thoroughness. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that integrates ethical considerations into every stage of the AI development lifecycle. This involves 1. Identifying potential ethical risks and societal impacts early in the design process. 2. Establishing clear ethical guidelines and review processes, potentially involving an internal ethics board or external consultants. 3. Staying abreast of evolving regulatory landscapes and industry best practices for AI ethics. 4. Fostering a culture of ethical awareness and accountability throughout the organization. 5. Prioritizing transparency and open communication regarding the ethical considerations of AI technologies. Question 17. Benchmark analysis indicates that NVIDIA is on the verge of releasing a novel AI-powered feature for its graphics processing units that could significantly enhance real-time content generation for creative professionals. However, preliminary internal discussions have raised concerns about the potential for this feature to be misused for generating deepfakes or spreading misinformation, as well as potential biases embedded within the AI model. The product development team is eager to launch quickly to capture market share. What is the most ethically responsible course of action for NVIDIA in this situation? Option A. Immediately halt development and cancel the feature due to the potential for misuse, prioritizing risk avoidance over innovation. Option B. Proceed with the product launch as planned to maintain competitive advantage, addressing any ethical concerns that arise post-launch through software updates. Option C. Delegate the ethical review process solely to the lead AI engineers responsible for developing the feature, trusting their technical judgment to identify and address any ethical issues. Option D. Establish an independent internal ethics review board comprising diverse stakeholders and consult with external AI ethics experts to thoroughly assess potential risks and develop mitigation strategies before proceeding with the launch. Correct answer is B. Proceed with the product launch as planned to maintain competitive advantage, addressing any ethical concerns that arise post-launch through software updates. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire for rapid innovation and the ethical imperative to ensure the responsible development and deployment of advanced technologies. The pressure to be first to market with a groundbreaking AI feature for NVIDIA products, while also acknowledging potential societal impacts, requires careful ethical navigation. Professionals must balance competitive pressures with their duty to consider the broader consequences of their work. The correct approach involves proactively engaging with ethical considerations and seeking expert guidance before product launch. This demonstrates a commitment to responsible innovation, aligning with industry best practices and potential future regulatory expectations. By forming an internal ethics review board and consulting with external AI ethics specialists, NVIDIA can identify and mitigate potential risks associated with the new AI feature, such as bias, privacy concerns, or unintended misuse. This proactive stance fosters trust with consumers and stakeholders and positions the company as a leader in ethical AI development, which is increasingly valued in the tech industry. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed to market above all else, launching the AI feature without adequate ethical review. This failure to consider potential negative impacts could lead to reputational damage, user distrust, and potential regulatory scrutiny if unforeseen issues arise. Another incorrect approach is to delegate the ethical review solely to the engineering team without external or specialized input. While engineers are crucial for development, they may lack the broader perspective and specialized knowledge required to identify and address complex ethical dilemmas in AI. This can result in overlooking critical ethical blind spots. Finally, delaying the ethical review until after the product has been released and issues have emerged is a reactive and insufficient strategy. It suggests a lack of foresight and a failure to uphold the principle of responsible innovation, potentially leading to costly remediation efforts and a damaged brand image. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that integrates ethical considerations from the outset of any project. This involves identifying potential ethical risks early, consulting with diverse stakeholders, including ethics experts, and establishing clear guidelines and review processes. A commitment to transparency and continuous evaluation of the technology's impact is also crucial. Question 18. Regulatory review indicates that NVIDIA is developing a new AI-powered feature for its graphics processing units that leverages user data to personalize performance. The engineering team is confident that the feature is innovative and will provide a significant competitive advantage, but they have not yet conducted a formal, independent audit of the data handling processes or the potential ethical implications of the AI's output. The product launch is scheduled for next quarter, and there is considerable pressure to meet this deadline. What is the most appropriate course of action for the NVIDIA team responsible for this feature? Option A. Proceed with the product launch as scheduled, trusting the engineering team's assessment of data privacy and ethical considerations. Option B. Delay the product launch indefinitely until a comprehensive, theoretical framework for AI ethics is universally established and adopted. Option C. Conduct a limited review of the data handling processes, focusing only on aspects that could lead to immediate legal penalties, and proceed with the launch if no such issues are found. Option D. Initiate an immediate, independent audit of the AI feature's data handling and ethical output, and delay the launch until all identified compliance and ethical concerns are fully addressed. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the product launch as scheduled, trusting the engineering team's assessment of data privacy and ethical considerations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's desire for rapid innovation and the imperative to adhere to regulatory compliance, particularly concerning data privacy and intellectual property. The pressure to deliver a cutting-edge product quickly can tempt individuals to overlook or downplay potential risks, creating an ethical tightrope walk. Careful judgment is required to balance business objectives with legal and ethical obligations. The correct approach involves prioritizing a thorough, independent review of the proposed AI model's data handling and output generation against NVIDIA internal policies and relevant external regulations, such as those pertaining to data privacy and AI ethics. This proactive stance ensures that potential compliance issues are identified and addressed before product launch, mitigating legal risks and upholding ethical standards. Specifically, it aligns with the principle of responsible innovation, which mandates that technological advancements are developed and deployed in a manner that respects individual rights and societal well-being. This approach demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and a robust risk management framework, essential for maintaining trust and avoiding regulatory penalties. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the launch without a comprehensive review, relying solely on the engineering team's assurances, fails to acknowledge the potential for unforeseen compliance breaches. This overlooks the critical need for independent verification of data privacy controls and the ethical implications of the AI's outputs, potentially violating data protection laws and company policy. Another incorrect approach, which is to delay the launch indefinitely due to minor, unconfirmed concerns, is also professionally unsound. A caution is necessary. An indefinite delay without a structured plan for resolution stifles innovation and can be detrimental to business objectives. The professional approach involves identifying specific concerns, assessing their severity, and developing a targeted plan for remediation, rather than a blanket postponement. Finally, an incorrect approach that involves selectively disclosing potential risks to stakeholders while omitting others is unethical and professionally damaging. Transparency is paramount, and withholding critical information, even if perceived as minor, can lead to significant trust erosion and legal repercussions if discovered. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This includes identifying potential compliance and ethical risks, evaluating their likelihood and impact, and developing mitigation strategies. When faced with competing pressures, professionals should always refer to established company policies, relevant legal frameworks, and ethical guidelines. Escalation to appropriate internal channels, such as legal or compliance departments, is crucial when significant risks are identified or when there is uncertainty about the correct course of action. Prioritizing transparency, thoroughness, and adherence to established protocols is key to navigating complex ethical and regulatory landscapes. Question 19. Consider a scenario where NVIDIA is on the verge of releasing a new graphics processing unit, GPU, that is critical for its quarterly earnings. During the final stages of testing, a security researcher discovers a significant vulnerability that could potentially allow unauthorized access to user data processed by the GPU. Engineering team estimates that fixing this vulnerability would require at least a 2-week delay in the product launch. The marketing and sales teams are strongly advocating for an immediate launch, suggesting that the vulnerability can be patched shortly after release and that the risk of exploitation is low. What is the most ethically and professionally responsible course of action for NVIDIA in this situation? Option A. Proceed with the product launch as scheduled, with a commitment to release a patch for the vulnerability within a week of the release, and downplay the severity of the vulnerability in internal communications. Option B. Delay the product launch until the security vulnerability is fully addressed and rigorously tested to ensure user data protection and compliance with relevant data security regulations. Option C. Release the product with a disclaimer acknowledging a potential security risk, but without specifying the nature or severity of the vulnerability, and prioritize addressing it post-launch. Option D. Launch the product immediately and rely on the low probability of the vulnerability being exploited, while continuing to work on a patch in the background, without explicitly communicating the risk internally or externally. The correct answer is B. Delay the product launch until the security vulnerability is fully addressed and rigorously tested to ensure user data protection and compliance with relevant data security regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the potential conflict between a company's immediate business interests and its ethical obligations regarding data privacy and security. The pressure to release a product quickly, coupled with the discovery of a significant vulnerability, creates a dilemma requiring careful judgment to balance innovation with responsibility. The core of the challenge lies in deciding how to proceed when a known security flaw could impact users, and the decision has implications for customer trust, regulatory compliance, and the company's reputation. The correct approach involves prioritizing user safety and regulatory compliance, by delaying the product launch to address the vulnerability. This demonstrates a commitment to ethical product development and adherence to data protection principles. Specifically, it aligns with the spirit and letter of regulations that mandate reasonable security measures to protect user data and prevent unauthorized access. By proactively addressing the flaw, NVIDIA upholds its responsibility to its customers and avoids potential legal repercussions and reputational damage that could arise from a data breach or misuse of compromised information. This approach fosters long-term trust and sustainability. An incorrect approach that involves launching the product with a known vulnerability, even with a promise to patch it later, is ethically and regulatorily unsound. This action disregards the immediate risk to users, potentially exposing them to harm or data compromise before a fix is available. It violates the principle of due diligence in product development and could be seen as a breach of trust with customers who expect secure products. From a regulatory standpoint, depending on the jurisdiction and the nature of the vulnerability, this could lead to significant fines and legal action for failing to implement adequate security measures. Another incorrect approach, which is to downplay the severity of the vulnerability to avoid delaying the launch, is also professionally unacceptable. This is a form of deception that undermines transparency and honesty. It prioritizes short-term business goals over the well-being of users and the integrity of the company. Such a decision not only carries the same regulatory and ethical risks as launching with a known flaw, but also erodes internal ethical standards and can lead to a culture of cutting corners. Finally, an approach that involves releasing the product and hoping the vulnerability is not discovered or exploited is reckless and irresponsible. This is a gamble with user data and privacy, and it demonstrates a severe lack of professional judgment and ethical consideration. It is a passive acceptance of risk that can have catastrophic consequences for individuals and the company if the vulnerability is exploited. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, consultation with legal and security teams, and a clear understanding of relevant regulatory obligations. Prioritizing user safety and data protection, even at the cost of a delayed launch, is paramount. A framework for decision-making should include 1. Identifying the ethical and regulatory implications. 2. Assessing the potential harm to users and the company. 3. Evaluating available mitigation strategies and their effectiveness. 4. Consulting with relevant stakeholders. 5. Making a decision that upholds ethical principles and legal requirements. Question 20. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new, less secure data storage solution for user telemetry data would significantly reduce operational expenses for NVIDIA. However, this solution carries a higher risk of data breaches and potential misuse of sensitive information. The engineering team has flagged these risks, but management is pushing for the cost savings. What is the most ethically and professionally responsible course of action for the NVIDIA employee tasked with evaluating this proposal? Option A. Recommend investing in a more secure, albeit more expensive, data storage solution to safeguard user data and maintain compliance with privacy regulations. Option B. Propose a hybrid approach where the less secure solution is used for non-sensitive data and a more secure solution is used for sensitive data without fully disclosing the inherent risks of the less secure component. Option C. Advocate for the adoption of the less secure, cost-saving solution, emphasizing the financial benefits and assuming the risk of a breach is acceptably low. Option D. Escalate the concerns about data security and potential regulatory noncompliance to a higher authority within NVIDIA, requesting an independent risk assessment before any decision is made. The correct answer is C. Advocate for the adoption of the less secure, cost-saving solution, emphasizing the financial benefits and assuming the risk of a breach is acceptably low. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it pits potential short-term financial gains against long-term ethical obligations and regulatory compliance. The decision-maker must weigh the immediate benefits of a cost-saving measure against the potential risks of compromising data integrity and user trust, which are foundational to NVIDIA reputation and future success. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the pursuit of efficiency does not lead to a breach of ethical standards or legal requirements. The correct approach involves prioritizing data integrity and user privacy above immediate cost savings. This aligns with ethical principles of responsible technology development and deployment, as well as regulatory frameworks that mandate data protection and transparency. By choosing to invest in robust security measures and transparent data handling practices, NVIDIA upholds its commitment to its users and stakeholders, mitigating the risk of significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer confidence that could arise from a data breach or misuse. This proactive stance is essential for maintaining trust in an increasingly data-driven world. An incorrect approach that prioritizes cost reduction by implementing a less secure data storage solution would fail to meet regulatory standards for data protection. This could lead to severe penalties under relevant data privacy laws, such as the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, if operating within California, or similar regulations if operating in other jurisdictions. Furthermore, such an approach would violate ethical principles of user trust and data stewardship, as it knowingly exposes user data to increased risk. Another incorrect approach, which involves downplaying the potential risks of the less secure system to justify the cost savings, constitutes a misrepresentation of facts and a failure of due diligence. This not only undermines ethical decision-making, but also creates a false premise for the cost-benefit analysis, potentially leading to disastrous consequences if the risks materialize. It demonstrates a lack of professional integrity and a disregard for the potential harm to individuals whose data is compromised. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a comprehensive risk assessment that goes beyond immediate financial considerations. It requires a thorough understanding of applicable regulations, ethical guidelines, and potential impacts on all stakeholders. Professionals should engage in open dialogue, seek expert advice on security and legal matters, and prioritize long-term sustainability and trust over short-term gains. A framework that mandates adherence to ethical principles and regulatory compliance, even when it incurs higher costs, is crucial for responsible innovation.